I'm here with Garrett Schustrich. This is the first interview we have on Daily Fab Gameplay. Garrett is Rhett on Discord. You've been playing 5 for quite some time, is that right?
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. I've been playing 5 for something going on about a year and a half now, I think. I picked him up last year at Nationals.
Yeah, and that was the first time that you had reached out to me, was you were the other Day 2 Fi at the Vegas Calling.
Yeah, that one went pretty well. It was a very janky list that we were on back then, and I had just started the Fi journey up maybe a couple months prior to that, like properly trying to lab the deck and figure out what I wanted to do with him. But, there's so much to go on this hero, and he's got a lot of unique builds, so it takes a while to really dial it in.
So if we're just running down your resume of accomplishments since then, you had Day 2 of the Vegas Calling, 11th place of the Los Angeles Calling this year. You have how many ProQuest and RTN wins with Fi?
I have 1 ProQuest from last season, 1 ProQuest from this season, and I don't have any RTN victories. Part of that, I don't really attend a lot of them, to be honest with you. I usually just pick one whenever the schedule can afford it, and I go, and hopefully I do well. And both times I did PQs, I did in fact take them down.
And that the PQ this year and the Calling were both with Fi in what some influential content creators would call a very bad meta for Fi.
That's what I've heard.
Maybe even
some
calling him
people
unplayable.
Yeah, they said the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. That was weird, because I think the juice tastes pretty good, you know?
That's, you know what? I can't argue with your results. Was Fi your first hero, or it sounds like you came from something else?
I came from something else. I started playing Flesh and Blood somewhere around the tail end of Tales of Aria and the beginning of Everfest. But I wasn't playing CC until Uprising actually smacked. My first ever CC was, I want to say, January of 2022. I had gone to a ProQuest on Bolton Axes of all things. So I started on Bolton Axes. I played him for maybe 3 or 4 months until moving to Bravo. I was on Bravo when Pro Tour Baltimore rolled around. And my teammate and friend had qualified for Pro Tour Baltimore, so I wanted to go out and support him. And I did the calling out there on Bravo. And then a little bit after that, somewhere between then and Nationals of that year, I did switch to Fi, and I've been on Fi ever since.
So I guess why Fi is the first question, and the follow-up to that is why Fi and not Katsu?
Okay, I'll answer the second one first because I think it's easier. I think that Katsu has a lot of natural inconsistencies in the way that his cards work. He very often is losing to himself more than he's losing to his opponent, and that's not the type of game that I want to play at the end of the day. I like consistency above all else, even if it means sacrificing on damage or power. Like, man, consistency in this game feels good when you know you're not gonna brick. As for the first question, why Fi in the first place? I was playing Bravo, and my roommate, who had just picked up the game on my recommendation, wanted to play the game, and I crafted him up a very quick Fi deck. He's an excellent beginner hero. I didn't really think anything of it. In his build, though, I knew that I needed some D-Reacts for him because it's Bravo, and I felt like he would have a better time if he was able to actually do a little bit of blocking. So I ended up just chucking all of them in. I chucked all 9 D-Reacts into Fi, and then I put together basically all the starters, no real thought to it, chucked the Art of Wars and whatever, and then I handed him the deck. And what I found is me, who'd been playing the game for almost a year and a half at this point and felt pretty competent playing Bravo, was losing to my brand new roommate on Fi. And it was the most infuriating thing ever. I was like, how are you doing this? And he's like, well, I just stack 1 D-React in the arsenal, and I get another one in my hand, and then I block, and I turn off all your on hits, and I'm just outvaluing you. I was like, wow. And then I went to look at other Fi lists, and I was like, where are the D-Reacts in these things? These things seem busted. So that was where the Fi journey started. I made the switch over to him because I was sick of getting my teeth kicked in by my brand new roommate. I was like, this hero must have some chops or something. This was way back in the Ultim meta, and so yeah, we switched on to Fi, and then never really looked back. There's something to be said there about how I believe, even to this day, that Fi is one of the most versatile heroes in that he, above all else, over every other hero in this game, is able to pilot excellent 1-card, 2-card, 3-card, 4-card, and 5-card hands. That cannot be said for very many heroes in this game. Most heroes have a sweet spot that they want to hit, and Fi just doesn't care. He'll play any size hand pretty much to perfection.
That's true. That's a really good point. That makes a lot of sense, and I have similar feelings about Fi, or at least, I did when I was practiced in the hero. But that does drive, and that does bring me to what I think is brings us further into, getting towards this deck tech is, I was a big Fi guy back in Bright Lights, Heavy Hitters hits. We get Victor, who is, public enemy number 1 for Fi players, but I think at the start of Heavy Hitters, it really looked like, well, we didn't have a good Dorinthia matchup, and she just got better, and Kasai is a real thing now. And Fi, I fell off of Fi, and a lot of people did, but you've been the driving force behind Fi innovation for months now. And what drove you to pioneer in the face of Victor and what looked like, at least at the time, not a great meta, rather than move over to greener pastures?
It's an interesting question. Part of it is just being stubborn. I put a lot of time into Fi, and I didn't really want to stop that. Like everyone else, when Heavy Hitters drop, I was in absolute panic mode. Mm-hmm. I watched your video of all videos, and I was like, dang it. No, I have to get off this hero. Of course I do. Shoot! I'm not ready. And I grinded and I grinded, and I put my head to the millstone over and over and over, and I had really good, competent local victors that I was playing into. And eventually, I tried a lot of things. I tried the full D-React package. I tried fat stacking on 74 cards with just 6 pieces of equipment. I tried it all. I really did. Mm-hmm. And I found that sometimes you can just race him down and it's not the worst matchup in the world, and other times you just lose it. And in truth, my locals, players who've been playing Guardian since Guardian came out, were rotating off of Victor come PT time. For LA, and I was like, why is that? And they were like, well, Victor's not very fun to play. He is a very RNG heavy hero, mm-hmm. in that there's not a lot of agency behind the clashing mechanic. Agency in gameplay as opposed to agency in deck building. Mm-hmm. And I just made a judgment call and said, I'm gonna dodge Victor, and I'll keep playing Fi, and Victor's not a real hero. As for the Kasai and the Dorinthia matchup, and even the we'll just talk about those two. I've never really considered Dorinthia a tough matchup. I've always had a unique build of Fi where it was on 9D reacts, and it's one of my favorite matchups in the game, one of the most skill-intensive matchups you can get, mm-hmm. because you'll be looking for these D reacts to line up on their power cycles, and you have to know when to take an off turn, when to take an on turn. I cut all of the Art of Wars into her. That matchup is brilliant, but I actually think it is massively Fi dominant with that many D reacts. I'm talking 90%, 10% kind of victory rates into Dory Dawnblade. It's just a very free matchup. As for Kasai, she's very quick and she's very race heavy, but I think if you just play very, very good lines of value, that's one of the fairest games of Flesh and Blood you can get. Provided you see power cards by turn 3, which you should see those around 75% of the games that you play, you're going to win that matchup. And then, so I ultimately pegged that matchup at around a 50-50 walking into PT, and I was like, I can take a 50-50. I'm not going to be stunted by that. Mm-hmm. Lo and behold, PT rolled around, and I did, in fact, take down 2 Kasais, and then I took on 3 Victors. So I called the meta wrong, but it still worked out.
It did work out, yeah. You had a great result.
Yeah.
Well, let's actually talk about the deck that you have been cooking here. Okay. So I have here the most recent version of the deck that you sent me. This has gone through some iteration since you competed in LA. Is that right?
Yeah, it's gone through quite a few changes actually. Some good, some bad, but yeah, this version feels like the strongest one I've crafted up yet for this meta.
Well, we'll start from the top then. If anyone's been playing 5 for a while, a lot of this is going to look familiar. Flamescale Furnace, Mask of the Pouncing Lynx, Emberblade Snapdragon. If I'm going through this, The biggest thing I want to talk about right off the bat is something new that's here, which is Vest of the First Fist. This is not a card that
This card is so good.
I hadn't considered it until I saw it in your list, and it makes sense when you're running Engulfing Flame Wave. Originally, I had seen Tome of Firebrand. But talk to me about Vest of the First Fist. What is it doing, and how did you even get on the card?
I'm actually not the one who got on the card. My teammate Connor Bodo was the first person to really throw it at me. He brought me a Phi iteration of the deck when we were still very early on in playing it. Maybe, I don't know, like literally a year and a half ago. Like day one, he looked at this and said, "Why are we playing Tunic? Why are we playing Blossom? Why are we wanting one resource when the game only goes 4 turns long? Why wouldn't we want 2 resources when the game's going 4 turns?" You know, and it just makes a lot of sense in those regards.
Mm-hmm.
Those extra resources are so good, and it's my first pushback on it was like, how are we going to guarantee that on hit? And he was like, we Artivore, anytime we're going to crack this Vest, we're always getting that on hit to go through.
Yeah.
So yeah, Vest has been a staple of any Phi list I've been crafting ever since, because its ability to like create those power cycles and really have pop-off moments with enough resources to make everything happen. Oh, the consistency this card adds is just absolutely insanity compared to something like Tunic or Blossom.
It makes a lot of sense. Still on the equipment, let's talk about what isn't here. Mask of Momentum, Harmonized Kodachi. What was the decision? Kodachi, I think, a lot of, and even back before heavy hitters, I was sort of off of it. A lot of people knew how to block Kodachi Mask, but you had the Mask for Dromai. Is that, she's LL'd, is that the only reason that Mask isn't here?
That's a little bit tougher, and actually it's a little bit of an agonizing choice to not have both of those things in the list, because I do love them both. Originally, Mask of Momentum and Kodachis were being used in my Dorinthia match. They were being used in my Bravo match. They were being used in my Dromai match. At present, I would say that all 3 of those matchups just don't really exist in their older forms. Mm-hmm. Anybody who's playing Guardian right now is on Victor. Anyone who's playing Dorinthia right now is not on Dawnblade. And anyone who's playing Dromai is probably cheating at the moment, so, you know.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah. But I will say, I think that that's just meta-specific for right now. There is still place in my heart for all 3 of those cards.
Okay.
And they are incredible cardboards, so it's just sad to not have the space for them right now.
What is the choice between you're on AB2 as opposed to AB1 Spell Void 1? Was that just we have more blues, or what's the decision there?
It does come a lot down to the ratios. I think this list has 33 reds in it, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Yeah, 33 reds with 12 yellows and 15 blues.
Mm-hmm.
On a lot of hand cycles, I have found that I typically have 1 blue and 1 yellow. And in Decano, I mean, it's really important that we can keep our health high versus him. Something, especially over the range of like 32 is my golden number. And I have found very often that on Spell Void 1, I don't really have the agency to be able to pitch into it when I do have that extra yellow card in my hand. And, you know, at my PT list, I was actually off of Spell Void 1, and I was off of Tide Flippers. No, I was just off Tide Flippers, but I was on just Spell Void 1 with AB0, and that, I mean, that was disastrous. I lost to Majin pretty hard because of the lack of AB in my list, and Spell Void just wasn't enough, so... this is actually the matchup I labbed the most when I got home. I immediately cracked down and said, all right, I do not want to lose to Kano again. AB2 is the answer. And honestly, it has been. Before, the conventional knowledge was always to go first into him because of our lack of Spell Void, or our lack of AP, rather. And we just, we recently pivoted, and now we are going second into him with AB2, and I mean, that matchup has gotten very, very, very easy.
That's really interesting.
That new card, though. That new card, kind of looking sauced, I'll be honest with you.
Oh, Kindle?
Yeah, that thing looks pretty nightmarish, actually.
That's an interesting one. I haven't talked to Majin about it, but I mean, to me, the first thing it said was, well, stacking Kano will do this because, you know, they can set it up so that it makes their good turns that much better. But Kano isn't stacking against Phi. He doesn't have time for it, right?
No, but the thing is, right, I was doing a little bit of play testing with Connor earlier, and we're both convinced that the card just makes your power turns better. Like, it's very easy to sequence in a way where this card is always usable, even when you have, one combo piece in arsenal and you've drawn another combo piece in hand and you have 2 blues. Like, that hand is just absolutely going to dumpster anybody.
Sure.
Yeah, it's a whiff on Kano, and that's primarily the reason I don't think people will run it as often as maybe they should. Maybe it's a 2-up, but card seems pretty good.
Do you think it's going to turn just the Fi Kano matchup into like unwinnably bad for Fi, or is there something you can tech for it, or is it really just like, well, I hope the meta takes care of him. Enigma's a hero. Prism exists.
Yeah, that's part of it. I think we've already kind of fixed up the Kano matchup, and I'm not sure how this new card is going to affect that, so testing needed there, basically. For right now, I don't see enough threat in that card to completely rewrite the list around this hero, who is probably going to get shut down by the meta.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to say about equipment before we move on to the main deck?
No, I'd say these are the primary pieces of it all. Everything there is pretty stock standard for what it is. It is weird not having Kodachis in the list, but like, the Ember Blade's super powerful and it does everything we need it to do.
Yeah.
So, the equipment's probably good. 2
for 3 most of the time go again is just really strong.
Just super duper strong, yeah. Especially in the face of that new card that Zin's getting. It's like a 2 for 2 with conditional +1.
Yeah.
You can tell they learned their lesson from printing Fi.
Yeah, we'll talk about Zen a little bit after we're done with Fi here, but I saw that weapon today and it was like, I'm posting in Discord like, wow, I sure do love losing 3 for 2 to get 2 for 2.
Yeah, I saw that.
Now it's got unconditional go again, but like, okay.
Wow, look at these cracked 2 for 4s, these cracked 1 for 3s. I'm sitting here crying.
It's 2 for 5 if you've pitched a blue. Like, we already do that. That's Surging Strike.
We already have that, bro, but ours have
unconditional 2 for 5. It even has go again.
Right, this 4 for 7 blue. I don't know. There's so many weird cards.
We haven't listened. We haven't seen enough of the new set. We haven't seen the Majestics. It's really easy to point to New and Enigma and say, well, look at all their new cards, but that's just because all the Tiger stuff is reprints anyway.
I agree. I'm not down on Zen yet. I'll probably still stick with Fi just because I know him as well as I do, but maybe he's cracked.
We'll see. We'll find out. Speaking of stock standard, I'm looking through the 60 here, and I think a lot of this is going to look familiar to Fi players. Engulfing Flame Wave is definitely the spice. The last time I saw this card, Belittle was legal, and when Belittle was legal and we had 6 resource turn cycles, Flame Wave is an incredible card. Is this all because of Vest of the First Fist, or is you really just feel like we have 15 blues, so getting a Flame Wave is better than getting an Ember Blade, or maybe you're seeing enough yellows and blues that you can do both?
So Flame Wave actually wasn't originally in any of my Ember Blade lists because, like everybody else, I thought it was too expensive. But I was running Kodachis as my primary driver through the Lexi meta. In fact, I didn't have an Ember Blade in the sideboard during the Lexi meta.
Oh, wow.
And Engulfing Flame Wave just lines up so nicely with Kodachi and Mask of Momentum. You can like drop a Flame Wave, then send Brandwith Cinderclaw, Kodachi, Phoenix Flame, and what you do is you layer that first on hit of Engulfing Flame Wave. I'm asking for 2 cards, please. And then you layer another on hit in the form of Mask of Momentum from your Phoenix Flame. I'm asking for a 3rd card, please. And Lexi, she was very good at piloting 3, 4, 5 card hands, but a lot of her 2 and 1 card plays were not that strong. So anytime we could rip 3 cards out, it was really good. So I've been on Engulfing Flame ever since. I did a lot of testing with the Ember Blade, but I do find that the 2 resource cost is not that expensive when you pair it with a blue and something like an Art of War.
Okay.
Even a 4-card hand that's like a blue, a Draconic card that I can pitch out for the art, an Engulfing Flame Wave and an art, like that turn is going to go for 19 or 20 damage just on a 4-card hand. So Engulfing Flame Waves on hit is just too good to really disrespect at this point. It's a card that not a lot of players have a lot of experience playing around either.
Makes sense. I
I was in round 8. Actually, it was round 9 of the calling, and I was sitting down against Dennis Sang, and I played out Engulfing Flame Wave. And he took this massive double take looking at it. He picked it up, he read it, he was like, I think I've seen this card before. And then he picks it up and he looks back at his friend and goes, this is Draft Chap, bro. This guy is 8x on Draft Chap.
No, Engulfing Flame Wave is so good. That's honestly what sold me most on your list the first time I saw it. Tome of Firebrand, all right, that's a fun card, but Engulfing Flame Wave, it was so many memories.
Yeah, if you can get it popping, it's a popping card.
Oh,
Tome
yeah.
is cool. Notably, that's lacking in this list, but it's just a very inconsistent card for people who like to gamble.
Yeah. Yeah, this is what I first thought when I saw your list, was maybe that's how you beat Victor, right? If Victor's got Balance of Justice, and if he's drawing cards, maybe you just draw more cards than he does.
It absolutely was. And it works. You know, it works when it works, but then when you don't see that card, or when you see that card in a hand, then you're getting disruption thrown at you, and the card says no blocks, and you can't even use it defensively like Art of War. Yeah. Like, it's gotten me killed in that matchup as many times as it has just straight up won that matchup. It's an incredible card, but you have to build the deck around it, and the current iteration of this list has too many 1-drops to even consider Home of Firebrand working.
Well, we can talk about 1-drops too. I think a lot of this is looking normal to me, but Blue Soaring Strike I don't think is a card that I've seen really in many fight lists at all. So what's the mentality behind this?
I have found on 15 blues, you often get 2 blues stacked up in the same hand. It does happen commonly enough. And when that happens, I always have that extra resource laying around, and you know, we were just looking at it and going, man, Soaring Strike blue, pretty sweet. Does 2 damage, has an on-hit. Sometimes people respect it with armor. In this meta, I think it's super important that we, like, force blocks out of people, so that armor pull is very relevant in this spot. Extra perks of this card, obviously. I've got 9 bricks in this list, and when this thing hits and I have one of those bricks, it's pretty incredible. I've pulled this out on a Pouncing Lynx before as a way of getting a triple finisher in my hand to work. You know, and sometimes I pull this card out on Pouncing Lynx just as a way of bluffing, because my opponent has 2 cards in their hand and no armor up, and I'm like, you know, if you let this Soaring Strike hit, things are going to get bad for you. And that, I mean, if I'm plupping my Lynx, that's what they're going to think to themselves. And it usually, so this card almost always demands blocks on a Lynx, and it almost never demands blocks in any other situations, but it does in fact Power Spike our all blue hands quite a bit.
That makes a lot of sense. The 9 bricks, of course, being Snatch, Salt the Wound, Lava Burst. Where is Tenacity?
Where is Tenacity?
Where is it? Very influential content creators have called it the answer to Victor. 10 damage against Victor on a Pouncing Lynx. Where is it?
Oh my god, that card's so bad, bro! It's so bad!
So bad, it pitches for Emberblade, you draw it later, I don't understand.
Yeah, it's a really sick Victor answer, I agree. Okay, so who else is it good into?
Bravo, Kasai, Dorinthia.
Bravo's not real. Kasai blocks with 2 cards, and some of them say prevention on them, so they're actually not blocks.
Okay.
That's super duper annoying.
That's true.
I find all the heroes that I thought it was relevant into, it's usually maybe at best a 0 for 5. And then heroes that it is not relevant into, I'm talking Katsu and Phi, and just anyone that wants to race us down. This card is a 0 for 2 that blocks for 3 every single time.
Okay.
And I just can't warrant that as a main board slot in my list. And so therefore I would automatically want to regulate Tenacity to a sideboard position. And that's just because of the amount of matchups it's good in. I would say Tenacity is good in like 5 matchups. It is bad in like 20 matchups. Of the 25 heroes in the game, and Salt the Wound is good in 25 matchups. So as a main board piece, Salt the Wound just takes my kick every single time.
Okay.
Now, I mean, there's an argument to put Tenacity in the sideboard, but the sideboard is already so tuned and tailored for what it needs to be right now to answer everything. I don't even know what I would cut in that. I'm not cutting the 60 reacts. The Warmongers are very essential in today's format. Maybe I could cut a CNC for 1 Tenacity, but even then, that 1 Tenacity isn't really our answer for Victor as often as you'd think it would be. Very often our answer for Victor is just rip tempo as quickly as possible on a big art cycle, and then just try to hold on to it. it's like when you're sitting, it's like getting on the bull. That's what Victor's like to me, honestly. You're just hanging on and hoping that he doesn't buck you off. Like, you got to rip tempo at all costs.
Yeah.
And I've never found tenacity to be able to do that. Tenacity
sense.
is just, it's so contingent on our opponent playing incorrectly. Whereas Salt is so contingent on us just naturally running out strong lines. I don't know.
Okay.
I understand why people run tenacity, basically. It's just not a card for me.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Ancestral Empowerment. You have 3.
Oh, this card is incredible. It digs my deck. That's the only actual answer I have. +1 is good enough, and it can push on hits like Engulfing Flame Wave, and Mounting Anger. But outside of the Engulfing, I wouldn't say this card is cracked or anything. It blocks for 3. That's automatically at advantage. There are 42 ninja cards in my list right now, I believe. So this card almost never whiffs, unless it pairs into an abysmal hand. But again, it blocks for 3. So if it does, you just block with it. But yeah, I actually do really want to talk about the fact that it digs a card. Like, that's so relevant. We already, as Fi, start on a 59 card deck. This is putting us on a 56 card deck, just stock. And, smaller deck, pretty powerful.
Yeah, that makes sense. More likely to draw Spreading Flames, Art of War, whatever you need. If the Ancestral's just digging you, and yeah, it replaces itself. It is just, if you have the ninja attack, it is just damage. This card was pretty bad in the, like, Rav, Kodachi list that run E-Strike and all of that. Like, this card does need a lot of support built up around it in the ninja density. But, like, I think that's probably a pretty correct way to build Fi with a lot of ninjas that can start your Ember Blade up. So this card just serves that purpose very nicely. But it is definitely deck dependent. Does Ancestral being in the deck mean that you aren't playing Enlightened Strike, or were you already not on E-Strike and that just gave you the door to put Ancestral in?
I have tried E-Strike multiple times. I am not a fan. I will say I'm a hater. For sure. Every time I play it, every time I see it, I'm like, oh, this thing kind of forces me to crack my snaps in a position I don't want to crack my snaps at. I'd rather save it for a better turn. I don't really want to draw a card off this E-Strike. I don't really want to pitch my Phoenix Flame off this E-Strike since I'm only on one of them. And yeah, E-Strike just... Also, I don't like Art of War and the way that E-Strike pairs, or Spreading Flames and the way that E-Strike pairs. Like, Art of War is asking us to go super wide, and E-Strike is saying, I'd like to sink a card. Like, that's 1 less damage right there.
Speaking of the Phoenix Flames, you're on 1. You have no Flame Call Awakening, and I think that's fine in itself. I was on a single flame for a long time, but with 3 Spreading Flames, I felt like there was more of an incentive to go for the super wide turns where you can put 2 or 3 Phoenix Flames on the table, and that really just buffs up everything. You can get these insane lines where your Blaze Headlong is 0 for 5, or your Flame Wave is 2 for 6. So with 3 Spreading Flames on the list, why aren't you on Flame Call Awakening and multiple flames?
There are 2 reasons that I would immediately cite. The first one being, I despise drawing into a natural flame. That is, I mean, it's game ending effectively. It's crazy how weak a red card can be that swings for 0 or 1 and it just doesn't do anything, right? But the other side of that is Flame Call Awakening is an extremely high skill card to play out correctly, I would argue. Having ran it a few times, something like Mounting Anger gets its identical value out while just being a very easy card to play around. And also, I would argue that Flame Call is tough to really pull off because of the lack of reds that I'm running in my list and the extra yellows that I run to get the consistency out. All around, I think that Flame Call Awakening works for a lot of players and a lot of lists that are on a lot of reds, and that's just not what my list is trying to do.
That makes sense.
You make an excellent point about the Spreading Flames pairing up with it, and I think that there is a version of this list that does run Flame Call Awakening. Just because of Spreading Flames and Art getting that extra point of value out could be absolutely massive. If you're one of those Fi gamers that just loves Flame Call Awakening, I think there's absolutely room in this list to put it in. at the cost of running probably the 3 brand with Cinderclaw, yellows would be the cut. Just so you can like up the red density and not literally like, yeah, you wouldn't want to destroy the blue ratio.
Makes sense. And without E-Strike, without Rabble, without Kodachis, I mean, brand with Cinderclaw, yellow, and Rising Resentment yellow to an extent, though Rising does have that on hit. Brand really is not doing much for you. You know, it's a 0 for 2. Depending on your turn, you can make it a 0 for 3 with Shuko. But for the most part, it is it just for pitch? It's just for density of doing a thing for 0 cost?
I think yellows in general are pretty good in 5 because a lot of hand cycles, especially early on when I was only playing like 6 1-drops, I found that all you really needed in most hands was a yellow to make the turn just function for like something in the realm of 12 damage, 13 damage. At this point, Brand with Cinderclaw on this list is exactly what you say it is. It's just a roll filler. It turns on my weapon, and it sometimes gives Salt to Wound Draconic on a Spreading Flames turn. And that's all I needed to do, really. Like, the list is super consistent. It also, there's something to be said about turns on my Spreading Flame even quicker, right? You can open with Spreading Flames and then send the weapon, and then send your yellow brand, and all of a sudden your Spreading Flames is turned on for the rest of the chain link.
Yep, that makes sense. Everything else here looks stock, but I mean, I'm not the 5 player at this point, so is there anything in the 60 that I'm missing that you really think we should talk about?
It could be 15 blues is a little bit high compared to most 5 lists.
Okay.
And 14 1-drops or costed drops, since the Engulfing Flame Wave's a 2-drop, is pretty high as well. 14 and 15 is a number. 14 costed with 15 blues is a number I've gone back and forth on a lot, as opposed to like, oh, there's no Lava Vein Loyalty in this list. There could be 3 Lava Vein Loyalty red in this list, and I could cut some of the Soaring Strikes out, one of the blue Soaring Strikes, and go down to something that's, what is that? Was that 12 and 14? Yeah, 12 1-drops and 14 blues. That would increase consistency, but Lava Vein Loyalty is the brick, and ultimately I'm okay with Vest of the First Fist being an answer for a hand that doesn't have a blue. Just utilizing it in that way.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a very aggressive list in terms of its ratios, but the ratios are pretty tuned and tailored to hopefully build consistency into it.
It makes sense. The more I look at it, the more I like it. I mean, talking to your point of E-Strike really prompts you to use Snapdragons in a time that you don't want to do it, or it forces you into this play. I mean, Lava Vein Loyalty is kind of the same way. You can draw 2 Lava Veins, a blue, and a Blaze Headlong, and suddenly you're in a position where you have to use snaps to make your turn function. But if I'm looking at this list, this list can't brick very easly.
That's the goal. Even at the cost of damage, I don't ever want to be put in a position where it's like, okay, well, this hand doesn't function, I guess I lose the game. And that's what it feels like most of the time. When you're playing against very good Flesh and Blood players, it feels like if you have one off turn, one off cycle, and you're presenting something like 7 when they're presenting consistent 12s and 13s, like, I don't know, KO, who can always just kind of present a 2-card block 6 and then a swing for 6 or a swing for 8 or something. It's like, we need consistency as an answer to keep up, and that's the one thing that Fi really has. I honestly, if I end the game with my snaps up, I think we've done something well.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense. Well, we'll talk about the sideboard then, because I think this is the most interesting part of the list, just as far as you have this 60-card main board that is very consistent, it's very damage-oriented. Every hand is just, like, the cards can block well. You have a bunch of 3 blocks, you have Ancestral Empowerment, but for the most part, we know as Fi gamers that it's really, you are racing a lot of the time. So then I look at your sideboard and I say, well, none of these cards race. These are all really bad at racing. So why? Why don't you just have more strong cards in your sideboard?
Oh yeah. Why don't we just play like Fi gamers, the true degen, never block? I love it. Yeah. Let's just add 12 more gas cards to our list, and we'll just beat up on everybody. That makes sense to me, obviously, right? Yeah. The Warmonger's Diplomacies for Azalea. Exclusively. It's unfortunate that there's 3 whole slots in this deck being dedicated to one hero. However, I have a guy named Michael K. Wood in my locals, and he's a really freaking good Azalea player, and I'm sick of losing tournaments to him, so I put 3 of them in.
Sure.
That's the only reason this card is here. I wish that it was Flick Flack, but I recognize that Flick Flack's not good enough to beat Azalea consistently, and Warmonger's Diplomacy is one of the ways to make that matchup very good. I also, if I had to guess right now, if there was a calling tomorrow, I would put Azalea at like 10% meta share. She seems super good right now, and Warmonger's Diplomacy is just an essential part of today's meta. This is a card that could easily come out if Azalea stopped having big stonks in the meta. And this is also a card that could come out if there was not a local fiend on Azalea in my local meta. So it's one of the reasons I play this.
Well, I think about Warmongers a lot as someone who plays KO now because we just can't play it. It's a miss. It doesn't work for what the deck is trying to do. And it seems like Azalea is really taking advantage of that, because I remember Azalea back in Bright Lights where she had to play Ravenous Rabbles and E-Strikes and Command and Conquers and have this kind of backup plan for when she got Warmongered so that her turn didn't just end. And Azalea today doesn't. You watch Brody Spurlock play Azalea and it's just lace, arrow. Lace, arrow. And every time I think, so Warmonger, you just don't get a turn. You have this is time walk at this point. So
this is just that notion of like people are not respecting this card, and we're one of the few heroes that gets to run this card, and I think that gives Vi some pretty good stonks in today's meta.
Yeah, that makes sense. You're on 60 reacts, which for me at Bright Lights 5 seems right. Reinforce the line over Fate Foreseen is what I remember being the call. So why is it now 60 reacts as opposed to 3 sinks, 3 reinforce? And why are you on 60 reacts at all? Why not just 3 or 0?
It might not be correct to run Fate Foreseen over Reinforce the line. I understand why people run Riddle and they love it. For me, though, I've always been a 9D React gamer in every meta, and it hurts to not even be on 9D Reacts right now, so that's the only reason. It's a personal preference. I don't like how Reinforce the Line demands a card from my hand. I've always thought that was super duper annoying. I don't have a lot of 3 blocks in my deck, so like usually if I'm using this card, it's either coming in for 6 or 7 on blocks, and turns out that's not enough to stop a Crippling Crush. Whereas Fate Foreseen in the arsenal and a Sink Below in the hand is more than enough to stop a Crippling Crush without having to give up a precious armor. So D-Reacts have always been my personal meta call, and I think they're very good. Why not 0? You know what? I would say this genuinely. If I had more aggro cards that he could stick in his deck, I might consider it. But the truth is, we are tapped on good Fi cards. Yeah. And like, come on, LSS, please. Just one. That's all. I'd love it.
I get that.
We're already tapped on very good gas cards, and putting more gas cards into a deck that only needs to be 60 cards doesn't make sense. So you really should utilize your sideboard to shore up those matchups that are just impossible to race down.
Okay. Command and Conquer. Why?
Prism. Yeah, it's mostly a Prism tech right now, and an Azalea tech. Okay. Those are like the 2 hidden decks in today's format that I would say, like, if you don't have an answer for, you're probably in a pretty bad spot. And Command and Conquer fills a spot that answers both of those decks.
That makes a lot of sense. Are you bringing it in against other aggro decks? Like, would you play Command and Conquer against Katsu?
I would not, and I have thought about it. But the truth is that this is a 2-drop, and I already have a 2-drop, and I like the other 2-drop into Katsu a lot more. Because it leads to more powerful options. And I mean, there was this one moment where I had a CNC in my hand. I was play testing into Katsu, and he didn't have an arsenal, so I stuck mine in the arsenal. And then, of course, like every time this happens, he has a CNC to swing at me.
Yeah.
I'm like, I was gonna do that. Yeah. It sucks. So I don't know. It just slows us down, and it's not really the plan that we want into a lot of the racing decks. Into a lot of the racing decks, we are just a better aggro deck. We just race faster when we are like very centered around being consistent and sending a lot of damage. And CNC is just, it's the antithesis of racing.
Okay.
It's very mid-range. It's meant to be played mid-range. So, yeah.
Okay. Makes sense. We have the matchups tab up here, which I'm not going to go through matchup by matchup. You've listed notes, ideas for the matchups. It's incredibly helpful. This link is going to be in the video description, so everyone watching can go and check out the list and really see what you're thinking about. But that means that I do want to take us back to the list itself and just, if you don't mind, kind of a general, when are you bringing in any of these 12 cards and what are you taking out? And what's the mentality behind those cuts? Like, do you have kind of packages like, okay, against these heroes, it's all 60 reacts. You're never bringing in just 3. Or against these heroes, it's warmongers, and this is what I'm taking out. Like, how do you sideboard? Is there an easy just rule of thumb behind all of these?
There is a rule of thumb behind it. As a deck builder and as a crafter, I despise things like 2-ofs. And I despise it when there's a 2-of in my list. So like I would never pull out 2 cards to put in 2 cards from my sideboard. It looks ugly to me for some reason, and it's purely aesthetic. If it makes me a worse Flesh and Blood player, I'm okay with that. I've got that OCD coming on strong here in this moment. When do these cards come in? So these cards all come in for Azalea. They all come in for Prism, not the Warmongers. The Warmongers only comes in for Azalea. I cut 3 Soaring Strike blues for this Warmongers Diplomacy blue. Okay. That's just the rule of thumb. I'll always cut that. Into every other matchup, I do not run Warmongers. Oh, that's not true. There's Viserai and Vincent. You should just do that as well. Yeah, you gotta. This card's good for 3 heroes. Outside of those 3 heroes, this card never gets touched in the sideboard. As for the Sinks, the Fates, and the CNCs, I think the CNC comes into Azalea and Prism and no one else. I use it as a popper into Prism. I use it as a way of buying myself room, space, and tempo into Azalea. And then the D-Reacts, they come into a couple heroes. They come into the Arachnes of the world, the Azuris of the world. It comes into Azalea. It comes into Prism. Any mid-range matchup, basically. Bravo. I'll put this into any matchup where I do not think that racing is good enough to win. I just slot in my 6 to 9 D-Reacts and I move on with my life. And usually, because we're Fi, a lot of people have a certain expectation set up in their head that we're trying to race them. And when we bring in this many D-Reacts in, that completely tonal shifts the matchup to them having the wrong mindset and the wrong strategy to beat us. And we have the correct mindset and the correct strategy to win. So we gain a lot of percentage points just from misplays.
That makes a lot of sense. Speaking about Azalea, my strategy for her was to really go the opposite direction, cut the D-Reacts entirely, go full aggro, try to catch her with a Warmongers, or just an off turn and then blow her up. But if you're boarding in the 6 D-Reacts, you're going the complete opposite way, or are you just trying to grind her out?
I am trying to grind her out. I've tried it. I've tried the gas race. When I first started Fi, your list was the one that I referenced the most, because it was the most complete and it had the notes that were like the most matchup complete. And you always said race, but every time I took that advice and I tried it, I found I was getting strung up by 3 or 4 red in the ledgers in a row, and I wasn't able to buy myself that big turn, and I would just die, and it kind of sucked. So eventually I just pivoted into playing all of the D-Reacts, and I found that usually 2 D-Reacts is enough to stop their weaker on hits. Like if they go like knock the death whistle, into put red in the ledger on top, into load the arrow, sweep it out, and then play 1 buff, that red in the ledger is coming in for 8 with 2 on hits. 8 for 2 on hits is pretty easily covered by 1 Fate Foreseen and 1 Flick Flag or 1 Sink Below. Like, that's a very easy thing to cover up and just move on with our life. Yeah. And then I found that if you could buy yourself that space, you can just slowly grind them down. These were, I was playing Mask of Momentum at the time, but now I think Pouncing Links is correct, and I think that I'm riding a line between going full mid-range on Azalea and going full aggro on Azalea, and I'm just in that very... I want that big gas cycle, but I want to buy myself the space to get to it by having very good, efficient blocks in the form of Fate Foreseen, Sink Below. And then I also have 6 cards here that buy me that big turn. I send a Command and Conquer, I set a Brand with Cinderclaw yellow in my arsenal, and I hope that I draw 4 gas cards when they're on an off cycle. So
Makes sense.
It's a lot of your old strategy with a little bit of my strategy.
Oh, I like it. I've tried the D-React package against Azalea, especially on Kodachi Momentum. It worked really well, and to what you're talking about, where they are not expecting it and they're going to misplay around it. I mean, that is a huge part of, especially now, being Fi. I think we were talking before we started recording that I think that it was a big advantage in the Lexi meta, and especially now when everyone is so down on Fi. It is a huge advantage to be the dark horse, where they have no idea what you're going to do, but you know exactly what they're going to do.
Yes, I absolutely think that's a huge part of it. People expect certain things from my deck that they are not getting. I have a local Tuckle Campbell who often says, like, you showed me that there is depth to this hero.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He was always very convinced that Fi was a one-minded, just go gasoline. We're not playing Flesh and Blood, we're playing Red Burn Aggro, Magic the Gathering. And then, he saw the D-Reacts in my deck, and at first he was like, that is a joke, that's not how you build Fi. And then slowly over the time, he's come around and he's like, yeah, actually, this hero has some real depth to him if you craft him up a little bit different than the stock standard stuff.
Do you think that the surprise factor... Sorry, go ahead.
Nope, sorry.
Do you think that this surprise factor of Fi, that people are expecting him to be red deck wins, and it turns out he can actually grind, is what makes him better at mid-range than other heroes? Or do you think there is something inherent about Fi that makes him a better mid-range hero than, like,
It has to be a combination of both.
Okay.
Right? It has to be a combination of both.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that there is the surprise factor of, oh wow, you have a lot of defense reactions. I wasn't expecting you to try and grind me out like this. Like, my win con into Arachne is to fatigue Arachne through damage. They're blocking so much and they're not presenting enough damage that eventually they deck out because they're having to block my Phoenix Flame and my Ember Blade, and I'm saving cards in deck on pitching them.
Mm-hmm.
Efficient weapons are efficient. And Fi is one of the most efficient weapons in the game.
Sure.
A 2 for 3 is pretty freaking good. So yeah, I would say that Fi does play a very good mid-range strategy. Is it better than other mid-range strategies? I don't know if I would say that. I would say that Fi's ability to play out very good 2-card hands, like Brand with Cinderclaw, swing the Ember Blade, grab the Flame, swing for it. That's a 2-card 7. And then those other 2 slots could be literally anything, whether it's a D-React or a brick that you want to set up in the arsenal. Like, our ability to play any sized hand is what gives us the ability to play extremely good mid-range compared to other mid-range decks, like, say, Kasai, where she is kind of forced or locked into a position of playing whatever she draws into. If she draws 3 D-Reacts and a blue, she kind of loses a lot of answers, whereas we just need to see any Draconic starter to get our mid-range package flowing. Does that answer that question fully?
No, it does. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Do you think that having this mid-range sideboard is diluting your aggressive main deck? We talked about Flamecall Awakening, Tome of Firebrand, cards that you've maybe experimented with and felt like they didn't make the cut or were too demanding of you. But are there more aggressively slanted cards that you would like to be playing that you actively miss, but that you don't have room for because you need the 60 reacts and the CNCs and the Warmongers?
I wouldn't say that's the case. Like, my philosophy when sitting down to build Fi has always been, okay, the first thing is that I want 60 cards that gel well together that create a perfect aggro package. The sideboard's totally irrelevant. Like, I'm thinking, okay, I'm sitting down across from Fi. I would like to race better than my opponent's Fi deck. That's always the goal for the 60 main board cards. Whether that's putting myself on tomes, or that's putting myself... What aggro card am I missing? Flamecall? Yeah. Or Flamecall or E-Strike, whatever that is. I want to be the most aggressive 60 cards that Fi could possibly run ever.
Yes.
And then the sideboard should always be, to me, just a mid-range switch in. Because if it's weird to me when people build sideboard cards around this concept of, oh, my main board is super aggressive, and then I'm going to put more aggressive cards in the sideboard. Like, when are you playing those aggressive cards over the aggressive cards that you already have? Why not just have 60 aggressive cards? Why have 63? Why do that to yourself? You're just wasting 3 slots at that point.
I get that. That makes sense.
Right, I don't know if people agree on that, but that's always been my philosophy to deck building. When I sat down to build a KO, it was the exact same thing. What are the 60 most aggressive KO cards that I can bring in for my aggro decks? And then what are the most mid-range switch decks that I could flop into whenever I really need to play mid-range? Because aggro just doesn't cut it.
I guess I am trying to think of hypothetical situations. It does make me think of what I had talked to you about before with like Tome Firebrand. Just, are we not drawing enough cards to beat Victor? Well, let's just draw more cards. And I guess that would be like, this card is just so risky against everyone else, but Victor is such a bad matchup that we just need to Hail Mary it.
There was some out that for when we were playing it for sure. I just found too often that Tome of Firebrand needs another powerful card to pair up with it. So Tome on a spreading turn is nuts. Tome on an 4 turn is nuts. Double toming is nuts. But a single tome is never really that powerful of a play. Usually you're getting 16 points of value out on that turn cycle, and that's if everything goes right. I have definitely activated Tome of the Firebrand for 1 resource, drawn an Ancestral Empowerment and a Red Mounting Anger, and I realized that is pretty freaking bad. I have no resources up. I've already cracked my vest this game. I just drew 2 cards, and now I'm forced to pitch this Ancestral Empowerment for 4 damage, and I already paid 1 damage or 1 resource to draw into this damage. Like, I just basically wasted my time playing Tome. And the worst part about playing Tome when I was on that list was that I was forced to run things like Yellow Ronin Renegade. I was forced to run things like Blue Ronin Renegade. I was forced to run Lava Vein Yellows and Lava Vein Reds. Like, any card basically that said Draconic 0-drop starter or Draconic 0-drop. I had to run it to make sure the Tome worked. But then you start to have to balance between how much power and damage are you putting in the deck for the consistency that you need to play out this Tome. When you play Tome, you're paying 1 resource to draw 2 cards. If you draw 2 blues, you just paid 1 resource to have 2 damage.
Yeah.
That's awful.
Yeah.
And I found too often when I was on Tome, I would play out the Tome, and then I would draw into just these really weak cards that didn't do it. There were other times. I mean, I played 4 Victors. Yeah, it was 4, wasn't it? Day 1 of the Calling, I played 2 Victors, beat them both. Both times I played Tomes out into them, it was like I drew a Snatch and a Blaze Headlong. I played 1 resource to basically get like an on-hit and a whole 4 extra damage. It was like 8 damage, 1 for 8 with an on-hit. Like, that's nuts. Yeah. And then day 2, I played into 2 more Victors, and both of those days, I saw a Tome in a hand that just didn't function because it had any other 1-drop in it, and it was a no-block, and I was just getting Disrupt and Chain to death. So Tome is one of those cards that's super duper good, but we have to build around it. And if you said, hey, why don't we just stick Tome in the sideboard then? I would say, well, you'd need to stick 9 other cards to make Tome consistent in the sideboard too. And then you're throwing away 7 of your worst matchups that you can't raise. Something like Azuri or Arachne or Dorinthia or Bravo. All of these heroes just start to kick our butt if we're only playing the aggressive package with no defensive anything.
Okay. That makes sense. I get that. But, it's all just going to come back to Victor, right? Victor is the boogeyman for 5 players. So you have this deck. You built it for heavy hitters. You have a good Kasai matchup, Dory matchup. You feel good about everyone. But there are no amount of D-reacts or CNCs that you can put into your deck that are going to win you clashes against Victor. So how are you approaching these unfavored matchups? And you're getting reliable success. So you're clearly doing something right.
So speaking specifically to Victor, there was a time that I was trying 3 unmovables, all 9 D-reacts, and the reinforce the line. I had 15 defensive cards because I was like, maybe we can just mid-range better than him. Maybe we can just somehow get him tapped out and try to fatigue him. It worked, but it was also 15 slots of cards and I was throwing away my aggro matchups. I basically chucked 15 matchups in the graveyard just so that I could get one good matchup into Victor, and it was too much. So ultimately, I just decided that's probably not the way to go. And then sometime before the calling, I watched one of your videos where you said, I've heard a rumor that you can just race down Victor, and then you did. I watched you on video. I watched you pop your tunic and just have one sick turn where you cracked Tenacity on the very first hit. And I was like, oh my gosh, is this how we beat Victor? Maybe it is. And I started exploring that avenue. Can we just race him? Can we just say balls to the wall? We are just going to race you. And I think the answer is yes. I think that's the best possible answer for him right now is we just have to hope he doesn't throw a sick string of disruption into us. And we need to get tempo, set up one really big Art of War turn, and then every other turn from that point forward, just slam, slam, slam. Put him on the back foot, keep him going. That matchup is doable. A lot of our worst matchups are doable by just stepping on the gas and going faster than we ever have before.
Okay. If I wanted to bring this style of Phi deck to Nationals, I'll be in Nationals, but there will be a calling in Minneapolis as well. I think this type of deck is just different enough from the list that I have up on Fabry that, the skills might not one-to-one. So if I was going to bring Phi, and I'm getting my reps on Talishar in person, what are the skills that I should be focusing on perfecting while I'm practicing?
Oh, that's a tough one. That's an excellent question. I think that a lot of the Phi skills that most players have will translate nicely to this in terms of knowing how to sequence correctly. That it always and will for always be my shtick when it comes to playing Phi correctly. You have to know how to sequence in the most annoying way possible. You have some on hits in your deck, but if you just chuck your on hits out without any thought for your opponent, your Chain Link 1 is an Engulfing Flame Wave, but your opponent has 2 block in their armor, and they have a card in hand that they clearly want to block with, that's a very bad time to send the Engulfing Flame Wave when you could have sent your red Brand with Cinderclaw, ripped that one card that they know they wanted to block with, and then you send the Engulfing. So that's classic Phi sequencing stuff, and if you already know how to classically Phi sequence in annoying ways, then this deck would be an excellent and very easy one that's very quick to pick up. I'd say the hardest skills to pick up in this list are the mid-range avenues. Not a lot of Phis are very well versed in how to play mid-range correctly. Knowing when to block, how to play the actual math of Flesh and Blood to get the most possible value in your mid-range matchups is the only way to win those matchups. You have to know that a lot of heroes like Bravo and Dorinthia are utilizing on-hit effects to go overrate, and if you can deny them on hits, then they are objectively just very bad heroes. Take a card like Crippling Crush. It takes their entire hand to send, and on hit, it's something like 17 points of value, but if you deny the on hit, it's 11. They just did a 4-card 11. That's very bad fab math, ultimately, if you can stuff and deny them their ability to get on hits. So that's probably the hardest translated skill, is knowing how to play mid-range. And if you're already a very good mid-range gamer, I'd say the hardest part about this deck is learning how to be an aggro gamer who can sequence correctly and play around what your opponent is always going to have, and knowing how they want to play into you is super important with this type of list. It's if you don't know the way that your opponent wants to sequence or how many cards they want to block with, typically take Arachne. Typically he's looking to make 2-card plays into us, or Azuri, she also wants to make 2-card plays into us. So we have to play around that fact when we're sending cards, knowing full well that our first 2 attacks are probably going to get blocked. So we shouldn't be sending our Engulfing Flame Wave on Link 1 or Link 2. We should be waiting for Link 3 or Link 4 to send that Engulfing Flame Wave out. That way we are putting pressure on their hand after they've already committed their blocks.
Okay.
Long-winded answer, but a lot of skills translate there.
No, that's a great answer. It's good to know. No, I'm very interested in practicing with this deck. I think it seems really cool. I like being a mid-range gamer. It's fun. But
that's KO. That's KO, I think, genuinely.
KO trained me, all right? KO did teach me some skills. I know that you're a Fifethful, but KO did hone that quite a bit.
Yeah, the desire to block is strong.
The desire to block 3 block is cool. I like blocking for 3.
Yeah, we should get a couple more of those. You know what I'm saying, LSS? Just like a Blaze Headlong that swings for 4, but it has natural go again and it blocks for 3.
Oh my, that's a pipe dream.
I think Fi deserves that, you know?
Fi does deserve that. He's been hurting for a long time.
That's right. This hero sucks. This hero
does
sucks.
Suck. It only won Worlds.
Yeah, it only won Worlds.
It's just the one time.
It only won the World.
So
that meta was so upsetting, actually, because it was perfectly positioned for Fi to win Worlds, but it was such a small sliver of his lifespan right after the Lexi meta, before HH was coming out. Icelander was still there. It was like all the pieces culminating into Fi winning Worlds in that one moment. But if this happened a month or two either direction, Fi would not have won Worlds.
Nope.
So we got 300 LL points basically on a fluke of the meta.
I agree. But what a glorious fluke it was. That 1 month.
Right.
Just,
it
was perfect.
That's right. And now our hero has won Worlds. How about that? Too bad he took a whole year of our lifespan off the hero as well. That's
Hey, at the rate K is going, he's going to be gone before Fi is.
Bro, so many LL points.
How stupid am I going to look
season?
It's insane.
That's so fast. That's really insane. Good. And then this new vest that he just got, actually pretty crazy.
Oh, Savage Sash is busted. The card is broken.
Wow. Fuck. Yeah, absolutely broken. Sorry, I almost cussed that. That was close. I'm gonna have to cut that one.
Well, let's, every time I upload a video, I say this is not suitable for children. Specifically because someone's gonna swear at some point, and I don't want to get dinged for it. Truth, brother. Well, if we're talking about Fi, in the next meta, we don't know. We've gotten some Mistveiled spoilers. We don't know exactly what we're getting. We know it's a bunch of reprints, and Fi and Enigma and New look really cool, and Zen is also in the set. What are your concerns for Fi, based on our limited knowledge? What are your concerns for him going forward? But then, what are you optimistic about?
There's 3 new heroes. Starting with Enigma, I think that we are going to be very good into her. We're going to put a lot of pressure on her ward. We're going to put a lot of pressure on her hands. Watching the devs play the game yesterday on Enigma kind of showed me a lot about her playstyle, is opting or choosing when she wants to instant out ward as a way of being a preventative effect to stop damage, and trying to set up her board. But then I see you've already clicked the best card in this matchup that a gamer could have. Tiger Strike Shuko is going to demolish this lady. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. Her cards do not have natural block value on them. What does that mean? My Shuko is just going to work every single time. Can you imagine a world where we send Lava Burst for 6 on a Shuko's trigger, and she can't block 6 naturally? Her entire board just goes, pew! I guess I lose the game. How about that? Yeah. Shuko is going to be the hardest counter to Enigma ever. I really think so. I even think there's like an argument for other ninjas to be on Shuko when playing into Enigma. Something like Zen should probably be on Shuko as a sideboard package. Just so she can if she's got no blocks in her deck, that's going to be really rough for her. Moving down to New, watching the New gameplay yesterday was a little horrifying, actually. I don't know if you've seen it yet, have you?
I have not.
They basically gave Assassin a lot of go again.
Okay.
Well, a lot of reactions. So there's a reaction. I don't want to be quoted on this one, but I think it says 0 for 3. Create a card that is a second reaction that gives go again. It is a 0 for 3 reaction that you can use on any card with stealth that automatically gives that card stealth. So basically, it's a 0 for 3 give a card go again. That is absurd.
Yeah.
Absolutely absurd in a hero with on hits that are disruptive by their very nature. I am very concerned about New's ability to disrupt us, and I do not think that the mid-range game plan will be enough to keep up with her without teching and speccing a lot more cards to try and make that work. She seems very strong. She seems like she has the Assassin of old and a lot of ninja elements coming in that she gets to abuse the action point as much as she's going to. And that's pretty scary.
Do you feel at all good with her that our blues are not worth playing?
Yes, it's our one saving grace. Thank God for that. Our blues are pretty trashy, and we don't run a lot of them, so she's not going to have a lot of good blue targets to pull off the top. And when she does, they're not really going to do anything for her, so that's huge. The other thing I think that we have going for us is that we are extremely quick, and we can put a lot of pressure on her. So part of me thinks that maybe we can just race this hero to the ground, and they're not going to have a lot of recourse to fight back when we're just ignoring what they're trying to do with their on hits. Like their weapon, they expect people to block that. I'm not going to block that. I don't care. Just do your worst. I'm faster. I'm hoping that's the correct answer. If it's not, we're going to struggle into new pretty hard, and especially because she can hit our Phoenix Flame in a lot of different ways. Yeah, that's going to be rough. If I activate Phi and then she activates her card at instant speed in response, it's like I have no recourse to stop this.
Nope.
Even Levia doesn't get that option versus us. We can still like pitch a blue out at least. And then finally talking on Xin. Yeah, I don't know. We haven't seen enough.
No.
Truthfully, I haven't seen enough to even tell you. His new weapon seems bad. Good, bad. It seems mid compared to something like Emberblade, but it's definitely better than Kodachi's in my mind because it has that natural go again built right into it.
Yep.
Tigers have always been kind of scary, and yeah, I think there's probably a build out there where he has like the Pouncing Lynx on, and he cracks his Pouncing Lynx to go find Salt for 17 because it's like he hit Tiger. However, the one thing that I think right now is that Xin seems a little slow for his best turns. He needs to find chi flips and then to set up like his really gasoline cycles. And I wonder how many chi cards a deck can actually sustain in their builds. So he seems like he's going to be wanting to like play more mid-range, do a lot of blocking while he sets up a nice chi play and then goes off for 40. That's my current guess. So I think we will roll him over. That's my thoughts right now. I think Phi is very well positioned into all three of the new heroes, provided new does not just roll us over.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm happy to hear that, especially coming out of heavy hitters, which was like, wow, half of these heroes seem really scary.
Actually rough. I was worried about Betsy at first. I still think there's a version of Betsy that does pretty good into Phi, but clearly Betsy has not performed into the rest of the meta very well, so
no,
that's okay.
Yeah, we've got that going for us at least, but I have seen similarly a version of Betsy that I think, wow, this is just horrible. Everything is like 7 discard card. I don't know how we deal with that.
There seems like a version of her that could be awful. Yeah. I just don't think she's got enough I don't think she has enough labs and enough reps on her yet for somebody to definitively say she's terrible. But I think this is maybe just not her meta. That's what it seems like right now.
I think that's fair, and I think she's competing with Bravo, who's just got Starstruck and Crippling Crush, and with Victor, who kind of plays himself a lot of the time. That it is hard to put a Fatigue Betsy list is easy enough. You put 74 cards together and put them on the table. But an aggro Betsy just feels like what you were saying. She doesn't have that fan base and that dedicated brewer base working on her when they can just play Bravo or Victor.
I think you're absolutely right on this. Like, the ability for Bravo to just do it better is still there, and he just does it better while blocking for 3.
Yeah.
Like, the fact that she doesn't have good 3 blocks in her deck and she's a Guardian is very confusing to me. Like, Guardian's iconic pillar has always been that they block very well and that they're extremely disruptive. They just did a 180 and like made a very aggressive Guardian, and I'm confused by the concept in my head. And in my head, I don't see her as a Guardian. Yeah, I hope they do iterate on her some more. We've seen the Olympia and Victor specializations in Mistvale, and they seem like, wow, the Victor one to me felt like I didn't really think that this hero needed help, but I've heard from Victor players that it does give him a bit of something he was missing. The Olympia spec is like, wow, this hero has an identity now. This is incredible. Where was this last set? Actually, such a cool card, yeah. That one is pretty sweet. I'm like slapping in new armor and equipment, like that's so sick. I'm torn because it's an awesome card and an awesome play for that hero, but it also lets him play 3 Balance of Justice, and I'm like, please don't. I have to see it. I have to see
Yeah.
it. Also, I feel bad for all of those Olympia gamers of the world because now they're paying like $2,000 for their expensive 3 of copies of all these L's.
I don't know if you ever played Hearthstone, but Wallet Warrior was a thing back then, and it is going to be a thing again.
I mean, I guess it makes sense for like a gladiator hero who's surrounded around the concept of like getting a lot of wagered gold up. So, if you got to spend a little extra money on that list, that's more power to you.
It's flavorful. That's a flavor win.
Yeah. I think that new Victor card is kind of a win more card in a lot of matchups, so I don't know how much play it's going to see. Basically what I'm saying is he's already winning matchups where if he put that card in, he would just win more. It's like you don't really need that card, but it is helpful in those matchups where he has a very tough time generating his first or second gold. So I could see that card being really good into matchups that are not Fi, and part of that is pretty great because we don't really have to like stress out about him running that into us.
Yep.
He'll probably still just be on Terra Sunder, and that sucks.
He'll
that
still
sucks.
just be
I'd rather
good.
if he didn't. I'd rather him generate a crappy gold and draw a card than play a Terra Sunder at my face.
Yeah, you're saying that like, well, at least we don't have to worry about this. We just have to worry about the rest of Victor.
Yeah.
The other 80 cards that were already good. Cards 81 through 83, it's like, oh no, we're fine now. We're good.
Yeah, precisely. That's hilarious.
Well, I got one more question for you, which is, speaking of new cards, let's imagine a time when James White calls you directly, says, Garrett, we're making a Fi spec, a new Fi card, only he can use it. He's getting 3 copies. What does it do?
Wow, that's quite on the spot. Let me give that one a little bit of consideration. I'll ask you a question while I think about this. Do you think there's any chance that Zen is going to overutilize Pouncing Lynx or Salt the Wound in such a way that it would get banned?
I think that I want to say no, because I think that the way that I'm imagining Zen working is kind of what you were saying, that he's going to kind of play the slow mid-rangey game, build up a bunch of tigers. There are a few cards he has that I can't remember off the top of my head, but that lead me to believe that he's going to let tigers sit in banish for a while. This isn't going to be like Kirikatsu, where he's making the predatory streak and then playing the tigers with an Art of War. Zen's going to let them build up and then do something to come in with all of them at once. And if that is what he's trying to do, is to set up this big pop-off turn, then pouncing for Salt has got to be the way that he wins. Because if Zen is just doing all this blocking to like, hey, here's 20 with 20 tigers, and there's no payoff, then, I mean, what was the point? I guess we could do Zen just finds tiger swipe, and then it's like, well, did you take 20 from the other tigers and let Zen draw a card, and now you don't have anything left to block the tiger swipe? It seems kind of, I don't know, if it very telegraphed, and if that's just one thing that he does, then that's kind of weak. So I would like to believe that LSS has entered a time when they are designing a hero, keeping in mind previous equipment and constrictions they have, and would not give us a like, it's fine and we're banning stubbies, it's chain and we're banning Duskblade. So to answer your question, no, but more I hope not, because if Salt or Pouncing Lynx gets banned, then I think Fi also gets banned.
Yeah. That's great to hear, and I think you're totally right. I think that's a very good take on it. Ultimately, I don't think he'll utilize them as well as he needs to hit them on the BNR list, but also if they did, that's pretty disrespectful to our hero. Like, that's the one thing we have going for us.
Yeah. Is
the ability to tutor out Assault the Wound. It lets us race in matchups that otherwise we can't race.
Yeah.
We have a lot of consistency in the deck, but we don't have a lot of like top end damage, like the Blood Rush turn that you guys have, or the Cast Bones, or all of these other incredible, immaculate power cards. Like, yeah, sure, we have an Art of War and we have a Spreading Flames, but these are like 1-for-6s typically, 1-for-7s at most.
Yeah.
And what is like Lexi had a 0-for-8 in the form of Rain Razors.
Mm-hmm.
Like our power cards just don't compare to other heroes' power cards.
Well, Spreading Flames and Art of War, they feel like they are power cards, but they aren't the payoff. They help build towards something. And the something in Fi's case is Salt to Wound or Lava Burst. But you don't always have it, so that's what Pouncing Links is for. But KO and Blood Rush is like, that is the payoff. The payoff is you played 3 attacks and you had a 1 for 6. But that was good enough, because all your attacks attack for 6 anyway. But with Fi, you're like, 0 for 2, 0 for 2. Now it's 0 for 3, though. But even so, at the end of the turn, you're like, and that was 18 damage with 7 cards. I did it.
Awful.
No Pouncing Links. Hey.
Now we're freaking down 7 cards on our list. How about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, between Ancestral Empowerment, Artivores, and the Pouncing Links, we are drawing out, what is that, 2, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 cards, and then Tomes on a 2-of was drawing me out 14 cards.
Mm-hmm.
We're effectively on like a 45 card list, and that's pretty good because we're seeing our power cards more consistently than other heroes are seeing their power cards. But you're right, our power cards are a payoff that builds up to one option, Pouncing Links.
Yeah.
Whereas other heroes, their power card is the power card.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Okay, to answer your question, if LSS hit me up tomorrow and said, hey, I would like you to generate us a card, I think that card should have something to do with Phoenix Form.
I agree.
Can you pull up Phoenix Form real quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
Our viewing audience probably knows what it is, but it's such a cool card that has no actual way to pay it off. Oh, what an incredible card. So I think of a card like Twin Drive. And Twin Drive reads, swing for 5, pay 2, boost 2 times. Mm-hmm. What I would love is if there was a card that was like a double Phoenix Flame.
Oh.
A 5 spec that was a double Phoenix Flame. It's like when you swing this, it counts as having 2 Phoenix Flames on the chain link.
Ooh.
And it would be like Inflame. It's like a 0 for 1 with that text. This counts as 2 Phoenix Flames on the chain link. That would be super duper cool. And then because it's a Phoenix Flame, you could grab this Phoenix Flame. Like, imagine a world where as soon as you've played this card out, this 0 for 1 that counts as 2 flames, it goes to your graveyard, but it's also counted as a Phoenix Flame. So you could activate Fi to grab this one when you want instead. But you can't start the game with that one in your graveyard. So you build into having a more powerful Phoenix Flame in your graveyard that you could eventually utilize for more consistent Phoenix Form payoff.
I like it, and I get it, because I played with Phoenix Form, I like Phoenix Form, but if I can raise you a more interesting card that no one has ever played ever, it would be Rise Up,
Rise Up!
Which I think is such a cool card that is completely unplayable. It's so bad, yes. But imagine if it wasn't so bad.
Imagine if there was a 0 for 1 Phoenix Flame that said 2 Phoenix Flames on your controlled link. This card seems okay at that point. You could actually build around the Phoenix Flame identity for Fi that right now we just can't do.
No.
Like, I feel like that's one of the builds that LSS wants you to play, but they didn't put enough support in to actually be able to play it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have to play too many junky cards, so you're playing your Flame Call Awakenings, which is a fine card, but inconsistent. But then you have to play your In-Flames. You have to play all of the Rise from the Ashes, which the red ones were good, but are not showing up in lists. But then you get into the yellows and the blues, which are totally unplayable, and all this work for 3 Phoenix Flames.
All this work for Rise Up, which literally is, at best, what is that, a 1 for 9?
1 for 9. With all of this
1
work.
for 9. It doesn't have natural go again. It functions as an objective brick. It doesn't have any kind of on-hit. 1 for 9 as a payoff. You're ultimately having to play out 3 Phoenix Flames to get that. So how much value are you losing in your reds in order to get your flame? Like, every flame is losing 2 points over a different red slot.
Yep.
So all of a sudden, your Rise Up isn't a 1 for 9 over the course of the game. Even at max payoff, it's only a 1 for 5 if you think about the value lost by playing those Phoenix Flames.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it's so
I would
cool.
absolutely love it.
It's such a cool card that is so bad.
Yeah, it is. This wasn't even good in draft, sadly.
Nope.
Like, I would actively not pick this card in draft.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Because good luck even getting to Chainlink 4 with a 1 cost in Uprising Limited.
Right. It was tough. It
Yeah.
was pretty tough. You didn't really have enough blues to support the card. And getting a Phoenix Flame on your chain link was also just not that easy. I have seen some pretty sick Phoenix Form lists. I do think that they are possible, but they utilize, and this is super annoying to me, they utilize Mask of Many Faces.
Oh. Yep.
I cannot imagine running this over a Pouncing Lynx.
No.
You're throwing your game in the graveyard. You're just saying, I don't really want to play Flesh and Blood at this point. I guess I'll throw away my free mask that grabs for 8 points of value for this one card that turns on one card. And the on hit for that card's not even guaranteed. Like, yes, a 0 for 5 on hit, draw 3 cards is insane. No, it is not worth 1 point of resource when my opponent could still just block that on hit out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But I would love it. I would love it if there was a Phoenix Flame that was effectively 2 Phoenix Flames, and you could not start the game with that card in your graveyard.
That's a good one.
Also, that card should block.
That's a good one. See, mine... Do you want to give the card block value, too?
I do. I think the card deserves block value. I'm sick of running no blocks in my Fi list.
That's fair.
I don't think that's too much to ask. This card's not good. I'm saying it's a 0 for 1 that just simply reads, this counts as 2 Phoenix Flames.
See, it's so funny that you say that. My answer is a 0 for 2 red. It's a Majestic, so we only get 3 copies of it. It's a 0 for 2, go again, blocks 2. When it's on the combat chain, it gains the name Phoenix Flame.
Oh, that's such a good one, bro.
This is what 5 players want. All we want. We're not asking for codex. We're not asking for cast bones. All 5 players want is more Phoenix Flame.
That's so true, bro. It's so true. We just want more Phoenix form in our life. We just want to lean into the identity of our hero being the Phoenix Flame god, and unfortunately, that hero just doesn't exist right now. And we don't have enough cards to make it happen. Like, I think if I was greedy, I would ask for a new, better card that makes Fi actually a cracked hero. Like, give me something that's on par and gives me the ability to defeat Victor. Like, on hit, steal all of Victor's gold. Something nuts. Or a new Blaze Headlong.
Yeah, my actual busted idea was just Blaze Headlong, make it a ninja action, and instead of it being red card matters, make it ninja attack action matters. If you've played another ninja attack action this turn, Blaze Headlong 4 through 6 has go again. That was mine. Like, just give us another 0 for 4. Go again. Another
0 for 4 would be nice. I think that it's weird when we see things like Sash coming into the game, and it's like, wow, this hero is already pretty good, and they're giving him something even better. But then our hero hasn't gotten anything in almost a year and a half that was like actually made for our hero.
No.
You can talk about Bittering Thorns all you like. It wasn't made for us. We can use it. We don't like it.
No, bro.
Nobody actually plays it.
What about this? It was Draconic.
Yeah, bro. This card's so sick, dude.
We can give up our headpiece that deals 8 damage and instead play a headpiece that does nothing.
Right. This is so infuriating to me. Every time LSS tries to give us a card, it always operates around our headpiece in some way. We have better headpieces. We would love it if there was a chest piece that supported this card. Yeah. I think. Or even a boot slot. I would give up snaps if it meant I could play Tome of Imperial Flame and draw the 2 cards. Probably. Maybe I would do that.
Yeah. No, I think this card would be obviously not as good as it was in Dromai because we aren't making the Ash. But we always run Flamescale Furnace, so we can turn 2 reds into 3 resources. This is just, it's a blue. And we get to filter the hand, because sometimes you are going to have hands where it's like Tome and 3 1 costs. And you're like, first of all, it turns on Blaze Headlong. Second, it lets you turn some of the 1 costs into a 0 cost, or a blue, or whatever you need it to be. So it's not even as good in Fi as it was in Dromai, and it would still be good if we didn't have to give up our headpiece.
It would be pretty cool, yeah. Like, I mean, there's always a use for resources in Fi, in the fact that we have a weapon that swings for 2 of them. And if we don't have a blue, we could build, like, Tome of the Imperial Flame probably could support a list that's all red, all yellow.
Yeah.
and just have 0 blues, and it would be a pretty cool list, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
I sometimes my biggest fault with the way that they've handled Fi as a hero is they really gave us 1 or 2 builds for a hero that deserves 6 builds.
Yeah.
And they could give us 6 builds with just like 3 new cards that aren't good in the existing builds. But people could then have a much more fun way of building and playing the hero for things that are like more in a casual sense, like a UPF type of vibe. Yeah.
You could also have a hero, sort of what you've done with your list, which is like you sit down from a Fi and you have no idea what they're doing. Right? Are they going to be full aggro? Are they going to be mid-range? Are they going to be some weird fatigue Fi that just runs all of the flick-flacks? Because now they have something that just works better for being a defensive hero. And they don't even have to be good cards, it just has to be support for it, because that support for Fi doesn't exist.
Right. I wonder if I can pull that up. Is it this one? I recently got linked a full fatigue Fi deck list. Oh, it is this. I wonder if it's still around. Oh, here it is. This thing's incredible. Hang on, I'm linking you a list.
Yeah, send it to me.
Sorry, a little off topic. This is incredible. This list got me going.
Oh no.
Shout out to Matt, whoever, I didn't see the name at the top. Matt Tati05. But one of my locals ran into this at a calling.
Oh my god.
And lost to it.
Of course he did.
Of course he did.
Because
there's a pummel in the sideboard, bro.
You need your one of pummel, of course.
It's a fatigue 5, bro. The guy was literally like, yeah, I just started chucking one-ofs of everything that I liked in the list, and this is what happened. Apparently he went like 7-5.
Yeah, no, won a game. It went positive. I mean, yeah, how would you play against this? You have no idea what they're going to do.
I don't even know what I'm looking at.
No. You have rapid
He's
reflex.
got rapid reflex,
So
bro.
2 of rapid reflex, but only 1 of razor reflex.
Yep. I think one of those cards is objectively... Well, actually, rapid reflex blocks for 3.
Rapid reflex does block for 3.
Wow. That's pretty good.
But it only works on your 0 costs. So you can't even buff your Torrent of Tempo.
Right, and your Torrent of Tempo and Take the Tempo are clearly pretty good cards. I wish Take the Tempo was better than it is. That's not true. I just wish it didn't cost 1.
Yeah.
That's not true. I think that would be too broken. I just wish it had Go Again. That's really what I wish.
I just wish it was a better card.
1 for 4 with Go Again and a 2 block that says the exact same effect.
Ooh.
It's like 1/4/2 on hit, banish top, says Go Again.
Alright, I'm changing my answer. That's the Fi card I want LSS to make.
I see. You want another engulfing flame wave. That's what I've just
I want another cheaper engulfing flame wave.
Yes, please give us another engulfing flame wave. I don't care how it happens. Take the Tempo is pretty sick, but I am somewhat convinced that Fi cannot really afford to play more than 9 bricks if you want to be actually consistent.
I think that makes sense.
More than that, I think you just throw a tournament, like any tournament that goes more than 5 rounds, you're throwing in the dumpster when you are playing too many bricks in your list, because eventually you will draw a really crappy hand.
Well,
this card's sick,
Fi already has plenty of awesome cards that he just can't play. Like Breaking Point in the Lexi meta, I think, was
super good,
perfect. And now that we've left the Lexi meta, it's a little too hard to pull off. And you run into like
it works
KO.
in Kodachi builds, but like Kodachi builds are not fast enough for today's format.
No.
And Kodachi builds do not have the ability to answer 14 value cycle to cycle from KO.
No.
Yeah.
No, KO just doesn't block. Or KO does block with his 12 armor that he has now.
Oh, can I'm gonna use
Guardian.
this as a platform to just rant for a second.
Yes.
I do not understand why it is that Brute now has a full fridge. Like, I don't care what this Savage Sesh says. I just care that it says temper 2 than 1. That is absurd on a set of heroes who already has some of the best equipment suit in the game. It used to be, when I started the game, that blocking was an identity of a class.
Yes.
You knew when you fought a warrior, they would be blocking. You knew when you fought a guardian, they would be blocking. You knew when you fought Katsu that he was a ninja and therefore it didn't block. It was thematic. It made sense.
Yep.
When you fought a brute, you thought to yourself, these fuckers walk around in cloth. Why is there cloth blocking for 3?
Yeah, exactly.
Why?
Yeah.
Why?
I learned the game against Levia, and it was like, she's got Carrion Husk, right? So she can do that, but she's going to play her Pulping, she's going to play Tear Limb from Limb. Her identity is that she will just kill herself. And Rhinar are kind of the same way. Rhinar builds have come and gone, but it's like, it's brute. The things they're going to use to kill you with don't block.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And now
changed with Swing Big.
It all changed with Swing Big, didn't it? This card's pretty good, and Brutes did in fact need the help when this card came out. And the effect was pretty sick for a lot of heroes. The Quicken token, super relevant to something like Bravo. And I think it's a pretty massive, like, contingent but that I have these days is, like, when KO came out, I was pretty shook reading him. I was like, okay, they fixed all the inconsistencies of the Brute class, and they gave him a really sick fridge. I don't understand what Brute is as an identity anymore. Are they meant to be blocking decks? Are they meant to be aggro decks? Are they meant to be consistent? Are they meant to be all 3 of those things? Is that what a Brute is now? Is that the new Brute identity? Like, Flesh and Blood to me has always been a game of identities. When you sit down across from somebody who is an assassin or a ranger or a ninja or a guardian, you typically get into your headspace. I know what kind of game this is going to be based on the thematic nature of the class. And this set, when they dropped the Brute and now they've dropped all this armor, it's completely destroyed the thematic nature of Brutes, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I benefit from it. I profit from it. I play KO, but I agree with you that it is very hard to just pin down now what Brute does.
Right, what are they? I don't even know. Like, I know what Illusionist is. I know that they fuzz things on Spectra and they play Ward and, you know, they don't have a big... They're illusionists, right? They craft up illusions as a way of saying, please hit this thing. But then imagine if Illusionist tomorrow got 12 armor block. What kind of an illusionist is that, bro?
Yeah.
He's just like, you don't need to hit my illusion. You can come smack me now.
Yeah.
I don't really care anymore. It's just a bizarre take from the developers of the game when they could have just created a new class if they wanted to have this type of thing. Like, I understand that Brute needs the special treatment, but I'm a little down on that as a concept for the game more than the gameplay. For the record, I think the gameplay that Brutes create is good. I just don't like that they're called Brutes while doing it.
Yeah. It makes sense. I think that's a fair take. But it's been super fun. Thank you for talking with me. Thank you for sharing your deck. A lot of people who watch the channel that have been down that I don't play Fi or talk about Fi anymore. And for all of them, this is for you. And I'm also super excited to try this list because it looks awesome and I want to play. I want nothing more than to break Vest of the First Fist to play my Engulfing Flamewave. That is the most fun thing that I can think of to do right now.
Cross Strap is pretty good too for this list, I'll be honest.
Ooh. Ooh, that's spicy.
I read
too.
Cross Strap in the Lexi meta. It was spicy. Cross Strap was sick.
All right. Well, do you have any
that
closing...
way we can send it on Link 0.
Do you have any closing thoughts for us? Anything before I let you go?
I think I just would like to do a couple shout-outs. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd like to shout out one of my best friends and teammate, Connor Bodo, goes by Illogical Bubble in the Discords. Very cool dude. He's been helping me lab this deck for a very, very long time. Also an incredible Fi gamer. I appreciate him a lot. This deck wouldn't be even half of what it is without him. I'd like to shout out my locals. Iron sharpen iron, boys. And like without them, I wouldn't be half the player that I am today. A couple notable figures there. Someone like Dan, you're incredible, brother. Thanks for always pushing Katsu and forcing me to play a better game into him. Tucker, you're incredible as well. That's all I got for you. Thanks for having me, Lupin. This was super duper fun and cool. I'm glad that I finally get my thoughts out into the open on this hero. I think Fi is very well positioned in today's meta. And I hope that some people decide to pick him up, and maybe nobody, maybe I've changed a few minds on whether or not this hero is good or bad these days.
I think you did. I think a lot of people are going to eat this up. So thank you so much for being here. A ton of fun. I'll talk to you on Discord, and thanks a lot.
Yep. See you later, Ronin Renegade.
There it is.